I woke up gasping for air, my body frozen and my breath turning to mist. I tried to move, but the cold gripped me like iron. Then I saw it. The freezer door was locked tight from the outside. My own son had done this, all for money. But what he didn't know was that his evil plan would soon cost him everything. Even his life. The world around me was fading fast. My breath turned into white smoke as the cold bit into my skin like knives. My fingers were stiff, my lips trembling as I hit the metal door of the freezer with the little strength I had left. Bang, bang, bang. I screamed, but no one could hear me. My voice echoed back, weak and broken. The light above flickered, and I could feel my heartbeat slowing down. I had been in that freezer for hours, maybe more. I had lost track of time. All I could think of was how my own son, the boy I carried in my womb, nursed, and raised with love, could do this to me. The same child I once held close on stormy nights now looked me in the eyes, cold and heartless, as he shut that freezer door. I remember his words like fire in my ears. "You've had your time, Mother. It's my turn now." I thought it was a nightmare, until I realized it was real. My bones ached. My tears froze on my cheeks. I whispered a prayer, asking God to forgive him, even as my body began to shut down. But then, just as everything started turning dark, I heard a faint sound, a scream from outside the freezer. It was his voice, my son's voice. He was shouting in pain. Then came a loud crash. And just like that, everything went silent. What happened to him that night still chills my heart more than the freezer ever could. My name is Margaret Hill, but most people call me Grandma Maggie. I was 73 years old, living alone in the house my late husband, Harold, and I built 40 years ago. Harold had passed away 12 years earlier, leaving me with a small fortune, savings from his years as a lawyer, and a house full of memories. Life had slowed down for me since then. I spent my mornings tending to my garden, my afternoons baking pies, and my evenings knitting by the fire. I had 2 children, Andrew and Evelyn. Evelyn lived abroad, but Andrew, he was my firstborn, the one I thought would always be there for me. Andrew used to be such a sweet boy, always following me around, asking endless questions, helping me in the garden. He would bring me wildflowers and say, "Someday, I'll make you proud, Mama." But somewhere along the way, life changed him. After Harold's death, Andrew became distant. He started asking questions about the will, about the money his father left behind. I told him it wasn't much, just enough to keep the house and care for myself. But Andrew wanted more. He got mixed up with some bad people, borrowed money he couldn't pay back, and began to treat me like I was the reason for his troubles. He'd come home late at night, smelling of alcohol, sometimes shouting, sometimes crying. I still loved him. A mother's heart never stops loving, even when it's breaking. One afternoon he came to me with a smile I hadn't seen in years. "Mama," he said, "you've been working too hard. Let me help you clean out the basement today. We could store some of your old food supplies there." It warmed my heart. Maybe he was changing, I thought. Maybe my prayers were finally working. We went down to the basement together. He told me he wanted to move the old freezer to the side and clean under it. I didn't notice anything strange. He was talking sweetly, even humming an old tune from his childhood. I smiled as I watched him move things around. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had my son back. But I didn't see what he was hiding behind that smile. As I leaned into the freezer to rearrange some frozen pies, I heard the heavy lid close behind me. I laughed at first, thinking he was joking. But then, I heard the sound of the padlock clicking. "Andrew," I called. "Open this, dear." No answer. I pushed against the lid, but it wouldn't budge. My heart began to race. "Andrew, this isn't funny." Then I heard his voice, cold and shaking. "I'm sorry, Mother. I just need what's mine. The money. The house. You'll understand one day." My blood turned cold, colder than the ice around me. I screamed, hit the lid, begged him to stop. But his footsteps grew faint. He was leaving me there, to die. For the first few minutes, I kept telling myself he'd come back. He was my son. He couldn't possibly mean this. But as the hours passed, my hope began to fade. The freezer was dark, and my breaths came out in short, sharp gasps. My legs cramped, My fingers went numb. My mind started to drift to happier times. Andrew's first birthday. The day he learned to ride his bike. The night he hugged me and said, "You're the best mom in the world." Was that all gone now? Had greed taken my son away completely? I prayed, not for myself, but for him. Because no good ever comes from evil deeds. Then suddenly, I heard something. A loud crash from above. A scream. Then silence. The sound echoed through the basement, followed by the faint smell of smoke. Something terrible had happened upstairs. I wanted to move, to scream again, but my body was too weak. My mind was fading fast. Still, one thought refused to die. What happened to Andrew? That night was the longest night of my life, and the beginning of something I would never forget. The next morning came with weak sunlight peeking through the cracks of the basement window. I was half conscious when I heard voices. Neighbors shouting, someone calling for help. The smell of smoke was stronger now. Then, through the fog of my fading thoughts, I heard someone shouting, "There's someone down here. In the freezer." Moments later, the lid opened, and a rush of warm air filled my lungs. I gasped, blinking against the light. 2 firefighters pulled me out, wrapping me in a blanket. I couldn't speak. My lips were frozen, my body trembling. But as I looked around, I saw something that made my heart stop. There, just a few feet away, lay Andrew motionless. His face pale, eyes open but empty. The fire that had started upstairs had trapped him inside the house. He had tried to run, but the smoke and flames got to him before he could escape. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. I just whispered, "Oh, my son." As they carried me out of the house, one of the firefighters said softly, "Ma'am, you're lucky we found you in time." Any longer, and he didn't finish the sentence. I just stared at the burning house. The house Harold and I had built, the one Andrew had tried to take from me. And right then, I realized something painful but true. Greed destroys faster than fire ever could. That day changed my life forever. I lost my son, my home, and my trust. But I gained something too. A reminder that evil never wins in the end. Because what Andrew did to me out of greed ended up costing him the very life he was trying to make better. Still, one question haunted me long after that day. What really happened in those final moments before the fire took him? And that is where the next part of my story begins. The night of the fire never left my dreams. Even after they rescued me and took me to the hospital, I could still hear the echoes, the sound of wood cracking, glass shattering, and my son's final scream. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flames dancing behind him as if they were swallowing his soul. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. My body temperature had dropped dangerously low, and another hour in that freezer would have ended me. I couldn't speak for 2 days. My throat was dry, my body weak, but my heart, oh, my heart was heavier than ever. When the police came to question me, I could barely get the words out. He locked me in the freezer, I whispered. My voice trembled as tears rolled down my wrinkled cheeks. He wanted my money. The officers exchanged looks. One of them sighed deeply and said, "Ma'am, we found evidence in your son's room. He had been planning to transfer your savings. There were forged papers and keys to your lockboxes." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. My son, my Andrew, had not acted out of sudden madness. He had planned it. Carefully. Coldly. But why? What had I done wrong as a mother? As I lay there in that hospital bed, connected to tubes and wires, I thought about the last few years. Andrew had been desperate, always chasing money, always complaining about life being unfair. But he had everything he needed, a roof, food, and a mother who loved him. Still, his heart wanted more. On the 3rd day, Evelyn, my daughter, flew in from London. The moment she saw me, she ran into my arms, crying so hard her whole body shook. "Oh, Mama," she said between sobs. "How could he do this to you?" I held her close, too weak to respond. I didn't want to speak ill of her brother. Despite everything, part of me still hoped there was some explanation, some reason beyond greed. Later that day, the fire investigator came to see me. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a clipboard full of papers. "Mrs. Hill," he said gently, "we've completed our report on the fire. I thought you should know what really happened that night." My heart tightened. "Please tell me." He sat down beside my bed. Your son didn't die immediately in the fire. From what we found, it looks like he tried to open the freezer, maybe to let you out. I blinked. He tried to open it? The man nodded. There were scratches on the lid and a broken padlock nearby. It seems he changed his mind, but before he could free you, the fire spread from the kitchen. He was caught in the smoke and lost consciousness. My hand flew to my mouth. I couldn't breathe. The tears I had held back finally burst free. So he had tried to save me after all. Somewhere in those final moments, maybe guilt took over. Maybe the little boy who once brought me wildflowers came back. Even if it was too late. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Oh, Andrew, what have you done?" The investigator patted my hand gently and said, "He may have done a terrible thing, ma'am, but it seems he tried to make it right." After he left, I stared out the window for hours, watching the clouds drift across the pale sky. The world outside looked so peaceful, so unaware of the storm that had torn through my life. In the days that followed, I attended Andrew's funeral. The church was small and quiet, the same one where we used to sing together every Sunday when he was a boy. I sat in the front row, holding Evelyn's hand. My body was still weak, but I forced myself to stand when they brought his coffin forward. The pastor spoke kindly about forgiveness, about letting go of pain. But as I looked at that coffin, I couldn't help but feel both sorrow and anger. He was my son, my blood, and yet he had nearly killed me. After the burial, neighbors and friends came to comfort me. Some whispered in pity, others in disbelief. How could a child do such a thing to his own mother? They asked. I didn't answer. I just nodded and thanked them. But inside I was breaking apart. When everyone left, I sat alone by the grave whispering, "I forgive you, Andrew. But I'll never forget." The weeks passed slowly. I stayed with Evelyn for a while as my house was being rebuilt. But the nights were the hardest. I'd wake up from nightmares. The sound of the freezer lid closing, the feeling of cold air cutting through my lungs, the faint echo of Andrew's voice saying, "I'm sorry, Mother." One night, I woke up to something strange. I heard a sound, a faint knock. It was coming from the window. I froze, my heart pounding. Evelyn was asleep in the next room, so it couldn't be her. The knock came again, this time louder. I slowly got out of bed, holding onto my cane for balance. I pulled the curtain aside, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There outside the window was a man, or at least the shadow of one. He stood still staring in. I couldn't see his face clearly, but he looked familiar. Too familiar. My heart raced as I whispered, "Andrew?" The shadow didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood there, staring. Then in the blink of an eye, he was gone. I gasped, stepping back. My breathing quickened. Was it my imagination? Or was my son truly standing outside that window? I rushed to wake Evelyn, but when we went outside, there was nothing there, just the night wind and the sound of crickets. Evelyn tried to calm me down. "Mama, it's just your mind playing tricks. You've been through so much." Maybe she was right, but deep inside I wasn't so sure. Because that shadow, that figure, had been wearing the same jacket Andrew always wore. The one with the torn sleeve. And as I lay back down that night, I could still feel the chill of the freezer creeping back into my bones. Something told me that what happened that night wasn't over. That my son's story and mine were far from finished. For days I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that shadow again, standing by the window, still as stone, wearing Andrew's jacket. The same torn sleeve. The same shape of his shoulders. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks, but deep down, I knew what I saw. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't my imagination. Something or someone was trying to reach me. Evelyn noticed how restless I'd become. "Mama," she said one morning as we sat in the living room. "You haven't eaten well in days. You keep staring at that window. What's wrong?" I didn't want to worry her, but I couldn't lie either. "Evelyn," I whispered, my hands trembling slightly, "I saw your brother." She frowned. "Mama, Andrew is gone." "I know," I said, clutching my chest. "But I saw him, I swear it. He was standing right there, looking at me through the glass. I could feel his presence." Evelyn sighed softly and took my hands in hers. "You've been through a lot, Mama." Trauma can make our minds see things that aren't there. Maybe you just. Before she could finish, a sudden sound echoed from outside. A loud thump, like something falling in the yard. We both froze. Evelyn slowly got up and peered through the window. It's probably the wind, she said, but her voice wavered slightly. I knew it wasn't the wind. I could feel it in my bones. That night, I decided to pray before sleeping. I lit a small candle by the window, the same way I used to when Harold was alive. It always brought me comfort. But halfway through my prayer, I heard it again, that soft, slow knocking on the glass. Knock. 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 My heart pounded as I turned toward the window. The candle flickered, casting shadows across the room. I could see a figure again, but this time, it was closer. I could almost make out his face. And then, clear as day, I heard his voice, faint, broken, trembling. Mother. I froze. The room felt colder instantly. Mother, forgive me. My knees went weak. I grabbed the edge of the bed to keep from falling. Andrew. I whispered. But before I could move closer, the candle blew out, by itself. The room went pitch dark. Evelyn burst into my room seconds later, flipping on the light. Mama. I heard someone talking. Are you okay? I pointed to the window, shaking. He was there. He spoke to me. But when we looked out, there was no one. The yard was empty. Evelyn called the police that night, thinking maybe someone was trying to scare us. 2 officers came by, searched around the property, but found nothing. There's no sign of anyone being here, ma'am, one of them said. But we'll keep a patrol nearby just in case. After they left, Evelyn sat beside me, holding my hand tightly. We'll get through this, Mama. I promise. But the truth was, she didn't believe me. Not really. And maybe I didn't believe myself anymore either. The following week, we went back to what was left of the old house to collect a few things that had survived the fire. It was hard walking through those ashes. The smell of burnt wood and smoke still lingered. My eyes filled with tears as I looked around the ruins. This was our home, I whispered. Every corner had a memory. Evelyn hugged me gently. We'll build new ones, Mama. Let's just take what we can. As we searched, something caught my eye. A half-burnt photograph lying near what used to be the kitchen doorway. I bent down slowly and picked it up. It was a picture of Andrew, smiling, his arm around me. The frame was cracked, but the image was still clear. I traced his face with my finger, my heart aching. But then I noticed something strange. Behind us in the photo, faintly, almost hidden, was a reflection in the glass cabinet. A shadowy figure. I blinked, thinking it was just dirt or burn marks. But no. The shape looked like a man standing behind us, though no one else had been there when the photo was taken. A shiver ran through me. I slipped the photo into my bag and said nothing to Evelyn. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I took out the picture again, holding it under the lamp's light. The more I looked at it, the clearer that shadow became. And then I saw it, the faint outline of a padlock in his hand. The same kind Andrew had used to lock me in the freezer. I gasped and nearly dropped the photo. Was this a warning? A sign? Or something darker? The days that followed were even stranger. Lights flickering in the middle of the night. Doors creaking open by themselves. The smell of smoke in rooms where no candles burned. Evelyn tried to find logical reasons for everything. Electrical issues, drafts, old house noises. But I knew better. One night, I woke up to the sound of someone whispering my name. Mother. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding. The whisper came again, closer this time. Mother. I didn't mean to hurt you. Tears filled my eyes. Andrew. I whispered. Is that really you? The air turned icy cold. My breath came out in white mist. And then, I saw him. Right there, standing by the doorway, pale, trembling, eyes full of sorrow. My son. Mother, he said, his voice echoing like wine through an empty hall. Please forgive me. I can't rest. I covered my mouth, sobbing. Andrew. I forgive you, my boy. I forgive you. But as soon as the words left my lips, the lights flickered violently, and he vanished, just like that. The room was silent again. Only the sound of my heartbeat filled the air. When Evelyn rushed in after hearing me scream, she found me on the floor shaking. I told her what I'd seen, but she refused to believe. Mama, she said softly, it's grief. It's haunting your mind. Maybe she was right. But then, why did I find the next morning that the burnt photograph I had kept under my pillow was gone? I searched everywhere. The drawers, under the bed, even the hallway. It had vanished completely. That was when I realized this wasn't over. Andrew's spirit was not at peace. And something, or someone wanted me to find out why. The following evening, as I sat by the window, watching the rain pour outside, a knock came at the door. Evelyn answered it, and a man in a dark coat stepped in. Good evening, he said politely. My name is Detective Harris. I was one of the officers who investigated the fire at your old home. May I speak with Mrs. Hill? Evelyn led him to me. The detective sat down, removing his hat. Mrs. Hill, he began, we recently discovered something at the scene. It might change what we know about what happened that night. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? He placed a small evidence bag on the table. Inside it was a burnt metal object, blackened but still recognizable. A key. The key to your basement freezer, he said quietly. But it wasn't in the lock. We found it in your son's jacket pocket. I stared at it, my heart pounding. You mean he kept the key with him? The detective nodded. Which means he locked you inside, but never planned to throw the key away. Maybe he meant to come back sooner. Maybe something went wrong. Evelyn gasped. So he didn't mean to kill her? We can't say for sure, the detective replied. But something tells me he regretted what he did before the fire started. As he left, I sat there in silence, my mind spinning. The key, the photo, the voice. All of it pointed to one thing. Andrew wanted me to know something. Something I hadn't yet discovered. And deep inside, I knew this wasn't just guilt from beyond the grave. It was a warning. Because whatever had caused that fire wasn't an accident. And I feared the truth was far darker than I ever imagined. The sound of rain tapping against the window kept me awake that night. The detective's words replayed in my mind like a broken record. We found the key in your son's pocket. If Andrew still had the key, maybe he never truly meant to kill me. But if that was true, then what caused the fire? What was he trying to tell me through those strange visits? Those whispers in the dark. Sleep never came. My heart was too heavy for rest. Around 2 a.m., I got up quietly, wrapped a shawl around my shoulders, and went to the living room. The house was dark and silent, except for the ticking of the clock and the wind howling outside. I lit a small lamp and sat in Harold's old armchair. The same chair where he used to read the newspaper every morning. As the flame flickered, I whispered softly, Harold, my love, if you can hear me, please help me understand what our boy is trying to say. The flame suddenly trembled, as though touched by an unseen hand. My breath caught in my throat. Then I heard it again, that faint whisper. Mother. It came from behind me. I turned around slowly, clutching my shawl. Andrew. I whispered. Is that you? No reply. Just the soft hum of the rain, and the creak of the floorboards. Then from the hallway, I heard something fall. A loud clatter like metal hitting the ground. I jumped. My heart was pounding so fast I could barely breathe. I grabbed the lamp and walked slowly toward the sound. On the floor, right by the doorway, lay something shiny. A burnt photograph frame. I froze. It was the same frame from my old house, the one that had gone missing from under my pillow. I picked it up carefully, and there, tucked behind the cracked glass, was a folded note. My hands shook as I opened it. The paper was old and slightly singed at the edges. In Andrew's handwriting, it read, If anything happens to me, look under the basement floor. My stomach dropped. The basement floor? But the fire had destroyed everything. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. When morning came, I showed Evelyn the note. She frowned. You don't think there's actually something there, do you? I have to find out, I said firmly. It's the only way I'll ever have peace. Evelyn hesitated. Mama, the basement is unsafe. The fire weakened the structure. It's dangerous to go down there. I've faced worse, I said softly. I faced death itself in that freezer. I'm not afraid of a little ash. Reluctantly, she agreed to come with me. The next day, we returned to what was left of the old house. The air smelled of soot and dampness. The firemen had long gone, but the ruins still whispered of what had happened. We found the basement entrance half covered by debris. With the help of a local repairman, we managed to pry the door open. The stairs creaked beneath our feet as we descended into the dark, cold space. It looked exactly how I remembered, except everything was blackened. The walls were charred, and the freezer still stood there, dented but intact. Evelyn held a flashlight while I knelt down, tracing my fingers along the cracked floor. He said under the basement floor. I murmured. After a few minutes of searching, I found a loose tile near the far corner. My hands trembled as I tried to lift it, but it wouldn't budge. The repairman came over with a small crowbar and carefully pried it open. Beneath it was a small metal box, rusted, scorched, but still sealed. I gasped. That must be it. We opened the box slowly. Inside were several folded papers, a USB flash drive, and a small notebook. The smell of smoke clung to them, but they were still readable. Evelyn held one of the papers close to the light and read aloud. To whoever finds this, I didn't start the fire. I found something I wasn't supposed to. If I don't make it out, know that they're watching. Evelyn looked at me confused. Who's they, Mama? My hands shook as I opened the small notebook. It was filled with Andrew's handwriting, messy, rushed, terrified. Each page had notes about large sums of money missing from Harold's old company accounts. He had written names, numbers, and strange messages like "Don't trust them," and "They want the house." And then on the last page, my blood ran cold. It read, "Mother's life is in danger. They told me to make it look like an accident. They said if I didn't, they'd kill me. I can't do it. I'll find another way to protect her." I dropped the notebook, my whole body trembling. "Oh my God," Evelyn whispered, covering her mouth. "Mama, someone forced him to lock you in that freezer." The room went silent. Even the air felt heavy. All this time, I thought Andrew had acted out of greed, but now I realized he had been trapped. Someone had manipulated him, threatened him, used him. My son had died trying to protect me. Tears filled my eyes as I whispered. He wasn't a monster. He was scared. Evelyn squeezed my hand. "We need to show this to the police. Whoever did this might still be out there." We started gathering the papers, but before we could finish, a sudden noise echoed upstairs, a loud thud, followed by slow, heavy footsteps. Evelyn froze. "Mama, is someone here?" I felt my heart leap into my throat. "Stay quiet," I whispered. The footsteps grew louder, coming closer to the basement door. Then a voice, deep and unfamiliar, called out, "Is someone down there?" The repairman looked at me nervously. "I locked the front door," he whispered. The footsteps stopped right above us. Then the sound of the lock on the basement door turning. Click, click. Slowly. Someone was opening the door. Evelyn clutched my arm tightly. The light flickered in her trembling hand. I looked at the freezer, the same one that had almost taken my life, and thought, not again. The basement door creaked open, and a shadow appeared at the top of the stairs. "Mrs. Hill," the voice said, calm and chilling. "You shouldn't have come back here." Evelyn gasped. "Who are you?" But I already knew that voice. I had heard it once before, in my husband's old office years ago, when Andrew first started having money troubles. It was Mr. Collins, Harold's former business partner. The same man Andrew had borrowed money from before everything went wrong. And now, here he was, standing above us in the ruins of my home, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "I warned Andrew not to dig too deep," he said coldly. "Now you're about to make the same mistake." Evelyn's hand tightened around mine, as fear washed over us both. That was the moment I knew. The fire, the freezer, everything. It wasn't just a tragedy. It was a cover-up. And we were the next targets. The air in the basement grew thick and heavy as Mr. Collins stood at the top of the stairs, his shadow stretching across the burnt walls like a dark ghost from the past. The flashlight in Evelyn's hand trembled, its beam shaking over his cold, sharp face. I could feel my heart beating so loud it drowned out every other sound. The truth had come to light. And now, the man who destroyed my family stood before me. Mr. Collins slowly began to descend the stairs, each step echoing like a hammer against my chest. "You should have stayed away, Margaret," he said in a low, dangerous voice. Andrew didn't listen either. Look what happened to him. Stop right there, Evelyn said sharply, her voice cracking but brave. The police know we're here. If you try anything. He laughed, a dry, cruel laugh that sent chills down my spine. The police, he sneered. The same ones who took my word for truth after the fire? Do you think they'll believe the ramblings of an old woman and her frightened daughter? I stepped forward, my cane shaking in my hand. You made my son do it, I said, my voice trembling but filled with fury. You made him lock me in that freezer. You threatened him. Mr. Collins stopped halfway down the stairs and looked at me with cold, lifeless eyes. Andrew was foolish, he said. He found out where the money went. He wanted to protect you, but I couldn't let him expose what your husband started. My husband? I gasped. What are you saying? He smiled faintly. Harold wasn't as innocent as you thought. He and I built that company on more than just law. He hid millions in secret accounts, and when he died, Andrew found the documents. He could have destroyed everything, so I had to stop him. Evelyn's voice broke. You killed him, didn't you? Mr. Collins' eyes darkened. He killed himself when he played hero. The fire wasn't my doing, at least, not directly. But I knew he wouldn't leave the house after I gave him his choice. What choice? I asked weakly. The one you never knew about, he said coldly. Either he silences you and signs over the property, or I take you both out of the picture. He hesitated. And in this world, hesitation is death. I felt my knees weaken. All those years, I thought my son was a monster, but he had been forced to choose between saving me and saving himself. You ruined my family, I whispered. You made him a victim, then you made me hate him for it. He took another step closer, the dim light revealing the glint of something metallic in his hand, a gun. I can't have you sharing what you found in that box, he said coldly. So this ends the same way it should have ended that night. Evelyn gasped, stepping in front of me. You'll have to go through me first. Mr. Collins sneered. As you wish. But before he could lift the gun, something strange happened. The lights flickered. The air turned icy cold. A soft wind began to move through the basement. Even though every window was shut. Mr. Collins froze. What is this? The temperature dropped even lower. My breath turned white, and the faint smell of smoke filled the air. Then from the corner of the basement came a faint voice. Mother. Evelyn's eyes widened. Mama, do you hear that? I nodded slowly, tears filling my eyes. Yes, I whispered. It's Andrew. Mr. Collins stumbled backward, panic spreading across his face. No, he muttered. This isn't real. But it was. The freezer door creaked open, by itself. A soft, glowing mist began to rise from within it, swirling around the room. The voice came again, stronger this time. Mother, step back. I pulled Evelyn close as the mist wrapped itself around Mr. Collins, who screamed and tried to lift the gun, but it flew from his hand, clattering to the ground. His eyes widened in terror. No. Stay away, he shouted. The mist brightened, forming the faint shape of a man, my son. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with something fierce. You took everything from me, the voice echoed. You destroyed my mother's peace, and now, justice will find you. Mr. Collins stumbled toward the stairs, but the steps beneath him cracked and gave way. He slipped, falling hard against the concrete floor. The sound of the fall echoed through the basement, followed by silence. The light flickered one last time, and then the mist slowly faded away. I stood there frozen, tears streaming down my face. Andrew, I whispered. For a moment, I felt something, a soft warmth around my shoulders, like invisible arms hugging me. Then, a faint whisper brushed against my ear. I'm sorry, Mother. I can rest now. And just like that, the air grew still. The cold lifted. The freezer door shut itself gently. Evelyn knelt beside Mr. Collins, checking his pulse. He's alive, she said breathlessly. But he's badly hurt. We need to call the police. I nodded slowly, still staring at the freezer. Call them, sweetheart. This time they'll believe the truth. 2 days later, the police confirmed everything. The documents we found in the basement exposed years of corruption. Mr. Collins was arrested and charged for fraud, extortion, and attempted murder. The truth about Andrew finally came to light. The world now knew he wasn't a greedy son who betrayed his mother. He was a man who tried to save her, and paid for it with his life. When they closed the case, Detective Harris came to see me again. "Mrs. Hill," he said gently, "your son's name will be cleared officially. You can be proud of him." I smiled sadly. I always was. That night, Evelyn and I sat together by the fire in our new home. The warmth of the flames comforted me, though sometimes the sound of the crackling would still reminded me of that terrible night. Evelyn reached for my hand. "He's at peace now, Mama." I nodded, staring into the flames. "Yes. But sometimes, I can still feel him near." As if on cue, the fire flickered softly, and a small photo frame on the mantel fell forward. Evelyn gasped and went to pick it up. It was a picture of Andrew, smiling brightly. She smiled faintly and whispered, "Good night, Andrew." The wind outside quieted, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Because even though my son had made mistakes, in the end, he found redemption. And I learned something I'll never forget. Evil may win for a while, but love and truth always find a way. Even beyond death. If you believe that no evil deed goes unpunished and that love always wins in the end, then subscribe to Grandma Hidden Tales, where every story teaches a lesson worth remembering. Red Heart.